Over to Pitt and Frank LLC and Cora Henderson. So, Cora, Brandon and his wife purchased a home in Oldham County. They lived there 25 days and they found out that there's a homeowner association in the subdivision. Surprise! They weren't told about it at the closing table. And what's worse, the HOA is prohibiting the truck that Brandon drives, that he uses for work with his logo on it, to park in his driveway or his garage. Brandon says, "Hey, I need it. I want to keep my truck with me. I wouldn't have bought the house if I knew that." So he wants to know, what can he do about it? Is there anything he can do about it in this email he sent us?
Sure. So the short answer is maybe. So I know he had mentioned it wasn't disclosed at the closing table, but I'd back up even further to say, was that disclosed properly in the seller's disclosure, specifically that the home was subject to an HOA? Was it a development where there were restrictions of record? Other types of clues that it may have been is, did you see HOA dues prorated on the closing statement, or was that discussed in your contract and or in the seller's disclosures during that part of the transaction? So a lot of other hidden clues or open clues that may clue you in, pun intended, that you are in an HOA. So I would go back and look for that. And if it wasn't disclosed, there could be a case against the seller for that lack of disclosure, and it would be worth investigating if that was a viable claim for you. As far as anyone that may be in a similar circumstances, and preferably before you buy the house, you do want to make sure that you pull those restrictions and look at anything that may be of interest to you. For instance, if you plan on renting the property, there could be a prohibition on rentals or how they handle certain types of fencing, things of that nature. So it's not necessarily common for the HOA documents themselves to be given over, and certainly not at the closing table. That's not necessarily the title agent's role. However, if you ask for it, it can certainly be provided. And moreover, don't forget that if you buy a home that is in that neighborhood and those HOA restrictions are validly lodged and made a public record and run with the land, then your purchase is going to be subject to those restrictions, irregardless of whether you were provided a copy of those or knew about it at that time. So I'm not sure if your beef would be or could be winnable against the HOA, but maybe against the seller if there was a lack of disclosure there. If you're ever concerned about the viability or the legality of a particular prohibition or restriction that the HOA has, I would encourage you to reach out to an attorney for review. I think it's curious. I've never heard that a logo truck can't be in your garage. Like you hear sometimes that certain vehicles can't be parked out front of your house or maybe on the street, things of that nature. But an HOA restriction where they prohibit you from parking a certain type of vehicle or logoed vehicle inside your garage where no one can see it, that's interesting. I certainly
Hmm.
haven't heard of that before. So, always asking the right questions to your legal professional may be beneficial too. I
Is
hope that
there
helps.
are there HOAs that don't charge a fee, so they wouldn't have collected it at the closing?
It's possible, yes.
Yeah,
So
it could
there
be
are
as also. Okay.
absolutely, and it sounds silly to say this, but there are some HOAs that collect optional fees.
Oh,
And
interesting.
so a lot of people are like, well, if it's optional, I'm going to pass on that. But yes, it could be possible. Now, that said, on the Kentucky Real Estate Commission seller's disclosure, that is the form that everyone uses or should be using, and certainly whenever there are real estate agents involved, that seller's disclosure has a place on there for the HOA information. So again, it may be worthwhile to go back and look at that to see if it was properly disclosed.
Good. A reminder, we have hundreds of videos about real estate. If you'd like to see one or all of them, as many hours of viewing, go to LouisvilleHomeVideo.com. That's LouisvilleHomeVideo.com.